double check here with you. So great, thank you for starting the recording, folks. Okay, we're recording these breakout sessions as well, just so that folks who come later and watch the meeting off of the website, if they weren't able to make it tonight, are able to see the discussion as well. So we don't have a formal structure for how to do these breakout rooms. We just like to hear in open dialogue what your thoughts and questions are. And this is, if I ended up in the right room, this is the section from Harvard Gulch Trail to Dartmouth. So the section that is kind of the southern end of the corridor. So feel free, those who are, well, anybody, feel free to ask your questions.
Well, I can start, I guess. I liked everything you said. I'm a teacher and I work at Human X Academy. And so I both commute I have an electric bike that I commute to work from Littleton. And in Littleton, we have we have the bike lanes put in, and it does really well. Since they put them in, people use them. And I think without them being there, I didn't see many bikes going along similar roads like Zuni, which is Prince or Mineral, and no one would dare attempt to ride it without kind of that buffer bike zone. So I think Denver and Inglewood's on the right track. My big concern, like I'm a PE teacher, so I'm out in the community a lot. We walk and do things along the Harvard Gulch Trail, all the way up to Federal and all the way down to the South Platte. So we use those as long walks. And my big concern is on Zuni and Harvard Gulch, that it's two hills coming down, right, from both ways. And one is, even if they know there's a stop sign there, they don't have time to react. There needs to be some sort of flashing, like bike crossing. And they did that in Littleton, where if you just push a button, you get yellow flashing lights, just so you can stop. Pedestrians there, you must stop. That's the law. And it's more than just putting a sign, stop if pedestrians are present. It's two flashing LED lights that really give cause for concern, because they go really fast down there. I know you guys said around 37 miles an hour. I've seen excess of 55, if people are kind of racing around and stuff. So I think on the right track. My concern is those crossings, mainly on Zuni because it's so busy, and then it goes down to Decatur seems okay because it's not very traffic. And then what's the next one down? East.
Home.
Yeah, the next one down. It's a little bit fast too, but not as bad as Zuni. Yeah, to the east, of Zuni. Tejon, yeah.
Yeah, my question is, why isn't it? Oh, go ahead. My bad. I thought you were.
No, I'm just saying that I think that's the direction it needs to go. I think you're going to put in these great bike lanes, and I think people will use them once you feel that safety. But I think crossing there I've crossed where they just race through you. They don't care if you're in the intersection or not. Some people, about 1 out of 10, will stop. If you're trying to cross through the crosswalk, they see you coming and they'll stop. But it's a major concern. And I hate to be a neighborhood where someone has to die first before they put a light up. Mm-hmm. That's typically what happens in parts of the city, Denver and Inglewood and Sheridan. They wait till someone gets hit and it's a fatality, and then they say, well, we should put up an honorary light. That's not very proactive.
Okay. Thank you. And Vinny, if yours is not tied on to Russ, go ahead. And if not, I can address Russ's first.
Yeah, actually, right past Dartmouth, a girl did die, and they haven't done anything. But anyways, my question is, why isn't it on Tejon where there's not nearly as much traffic? And also, what's just yesterday, I grew up here. I've lived here since 2003. And now I live in my parents' house, the house I grew up in, and my parents live right on Zuni, right near Zuni and Wesley. So they don't want to be on here, but they could be in the group one. But anyways, just yesterday, I drive up and down Zuni to Evans, down to Dartmouth and 285 all day, every day, because Federal is terrible. But one of the best parts, and I don't want this, I mean, I agree right there at the Harvard Gulch, a walkway would be nice. I don't think there's ever been one, and that's why people don't really stop, you know, so people, there's not even the paint markings, you know, let alone the flashing thing that he's talking about. So people don't really stop. It has gotten a lot better since they paved the other side going down towards the South Platte River. That's been really nice, but I just think Zuni has way too many drivers and naughty drivers. You know, just in the last 3 months, I know Hadar, I don't know if I said her name right, but the streets that I think mattered a lot was Hillside and Zuni and Vassar and Zuni. And just in the last 3 months, I think there's been 3 car crashes there. Maybe they're not all reported or people don't wait for the cops or all that. But I mean, I think last week, they don't even stop. The cars that pull out of there, they just pull out. They don't, and that's right at the top of the hill where you know that you're going fast on the other side. And people just pull out. I think it's a little dangerous to be putting the bike lane on Zuni. And not only that, but yesterday I saw a semi, or the biggest trailers that could fit, come right through here. And not just that, but they park right there on the Harvard Gulch and just kind of chill when, I don't know, I'm not a truck driver, but you know, maybe they have time to kill. I don't know how they're going to fit with the bike lane, with the parking. Already parking is way more congested. I disagreed a lot with the parking times that the data was taken. Most people here, it's a very, I don't like the term, but you know, lack of a better term right now, blue collar community. And my neighbors are up leaving for work at 4 a.m. They're gone. You know, they drive, you gotta commute to work almost an hour anywhere you go to now. And a lot of them work construction or et cetera, bus drivers and stuff like that. And I think like 8 p.m. when everyone's home from work would have been a better time to see the parking, because it's a lot worse. And I live on Yale and Zuni. So I don't think I'd be affected this much, but like everyone's just gonna park in the side streets, and Yale is already like kind of a full side street. You know, there are family homes. People's kids are, you know, 16 and older now, and everybody has a car. I don't know. I think just a lot of the side streets would get really full. But that's really it. My biggest thing is how are they going to get like big semi trailers to still go through when the streets are more narrow, or how are they going to get them to not go through?
Right. No, those are both from Russ and from Vinny. Those are some great questions. I've got a few thoughts for you, and you can give me feedback on them. And then also Gabby can give a little bit more background maybe on the, you know, why Zuni question. But first, I guess, Russ, to your question on the treatment at the trail crossing, that's certainly something we can go back and look again. And then Maria can give thoughts on Englewood's approach, but Denver has a kind of a criteria based on 3 or 4 different things for, you know, based on pedestrian volume, and not just existing, but what you might think pedestrian volume would be, because we don't only want to, you know, think about who's using it right now. We want to think about who might be using it, as well as volume, as well as whether there are gaps and sight distance and the proximity to parks. Things like that for determining exactly what type of treatment will go in at a particular pedestrian crossing. You know, given feedback from folks like you, we are always happy to go back and double check to make sure that it's, you know, the right treatment is shown there. Visibility given the speed is important, so we can double check whether we've pulled parking back far enough so that people can see ahead of time, even with or without a flasher as well.
I think my big concern is, like, it seems like the disconnect is one side's Inglewood, the other side's Denver. We've called both. We've been trying to get like even a school speed limit where you just got to go down to like 20 miles an hour just for that stretch, you know, that 2-block stretch, you know, like a half block before the school and maybe a block or 2 past the school. where there are pedestrians. We use that area a lot. And I think the disconnect is Denver doesn't want to feed in and Inglewood doesn't want to, they don't want to share responsibilities of putting in a light or a crossing light or putting in a school zone. They said they could do a school zone for us, and they haven't done really that. Like, you could say reduce speeds, fines doubled. People don't want a big fine. I would slow down if I see a school zone. Since we're a private school, I don't know if we get the same consideration as a public school, but we're a special needs school. We're a neurodiverse school with kids with some disabilities physically too. Some of them, not many. So my concern is we've been ignored for I've been there 6 years, and we've been trying for 6 years to try to get a crosswalk even put in with, some type of flashers or acknowledge that we're a school. Can you slow down in front of the school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that would help, I think, improve safety in that hill, because people are flying both ways. If you say school zone, that would give people a lead up saying, oh, I got to slow down. This is kind of the school zone area.
Gotcha.
But we've gotten no response. We've gotten responses back, but nothing in concrete. Nothing ever happens because a new director comes into Denver.
Oh no, Russ dropped off.
Oh,
Hey, is that Alicia? Was that
Humanex
Academy?
Yes. Yep.
So hopefully he can join us back in, because it may be good to ask him, like, what are the, but we can't conduct, we still have the things to do. What would be the peak times to count pedestrians for the academy? And, I do think that private, we have to check with our Safe Routes to School team. And I don't know, Maria, if you know this, but whether, they have the same, or we can treat them the same as public.
mm-hmm.
But I know that basically if we can understand what are the peak crossing times, then we can certainly put a crosswalk there.
Yeah.
But obviously we have to count when the peak times are taking place.
Sure.
And he's mostly concerned, and we'll see if he jumps back on. He was mostly concerned about the trail crossing locations, not up as high as Humanex, but just with the speeds at the current trail crossing. And so he understands that we're looking at putting striping in, and he's concerned that there's not more going in addition to striping.
Yeah, and I think our criteria are fairly similar for marked crosswalks adjacent to schools and obviously at the trail crossing. So I think in response to his question, we've only been made aware of Humanex's request within probably since fall.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the intent was that through this project, we were going to evaluate this and have both cities come together to have a united response in this issue.
Absolutely.
So I apologize that it's taken so long, but it's really, we want to work.
It's also on our side. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
and Vinny, to your question about markings on Tejon, we're also looking at that. So that's 100% within city of Englewood, at least up to Evans. And so we are looking at something similar, but I think the intent on Zuni is that it is a shared facility with both Denver and Englewood, not just Englewood. And so it really serves both communities, north-south in this area.
Got it.
But Gabby, feel free to chime in there. So Vinny's question was, why not a couple blocks to the east on Tejon? Oops.
So, I mean, obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this is sort of, our current alignments, they have been sort of vetted by the community over and over again for like 10 years now. And people kept pointing to Zuni because it is sort of that straight, one of those straight shots, through the communities. And it does connect on our side, obviously, it connects to a lot of parks and trails. And I know that, Tejon also does, but Tejon also sort of skirts around. Zuni is signalized for a lot of those locations, while Tejon may not be. And so we tried to take a look at all of those stuff. And once the community, one thing if they tell us once, but if it's like 3 times that they told us like, hey, Zuni is the way to go, and it matches the plans and programs that basically our partners, our Englewood, are stating as well, then obviously, we kind of have to, we prefer to stick to what we have heard from the community and what kind of makes sense for our neighboring partners. If there is obviously a fatal flaw because of whatever reason, then that's when we start considering other options. But at this point, we haven't come to sort of those flaws, for this corridor.
And one other, it looks like Russ might be back too, and we can recap really quickly, Russ, once we're done. But just to finish up, Vinny, with your questions, here's the Englewood plan. And it sounds like Maria said that they're looking at Zuni as well, but it also shows that there's kind of a disconnect when you're trying to make that longer connection north-south as well. So certainly something to keep an eye out for on Tejon as well, for those who are more comfortable with a facility on maybe a lower volume roadway as well. One other thing you brought up though as well is the truck volume and the truck parking.
Mhm.
Those are kind of two different issues, but that's something that we definitely run into quite often. Truck volumes actually help us determine on the Denver side, and I believe on Englewood as well, help determine lane widths in that case. And Denver actually will go down to 10-foot lane widths when there are lower truck volumes. And in this case, one of the things that we've decided is to stay with 11-foot lane widths in order to accommodate those existing and potential trucks. So it'll narrow it visually from the incredibly wide lane it is now, but it's not narrowing it down to anything that you would, be surprised at.
Okay, and
just
it,
to,
it would still be like the
sorry,
park
just
and
to
the
let you
bike.
know, so all of our designs go through our city engineer and is reviewed by our, emergency personnel or fire, or EMS, DPD. So at 11 feet, our, fire trucks are more than, are comfortable through those type of facilities. So if a fire truck can make it through a facility, so would just a traditional commercial vehicle or freight vehicle as well.
Yeah. My question was just because, I've been on other streets in Denver with bike lanes and they're tiny, but that's why.
Yeah. Well, and in reality, it's one of those catch-22s, right? The narrower it is, the more likely people are to drive the actual speed limit too. So while it can be a little uncomfortable, it can have the positive side effect as well.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Even though, like you said, even though it looks narrower, it has the feet that they'll fit. And
Right.
That was my main question. But yeah, thanks.
And and as far as truck parking, that's something that, can be addressed on a case-by-case basis. Generally, at least Denver's parking rules allow on-street parking, but not over a certain period of time. And I knew that 2 weeks ago, but apparently got pushed out by something. But it's something like, is it 24 hours or is it 48 hours, I think, before you need to move it. And so if it's a truck that's doing a delivery or something like that, then most likely that can continue to be used. But if it's truck storage in those areas, then that can be an enforcement issue that we can certainly work with either the, Denver curbside enforcement or the Englewood side as well, enforcement for the parking concerns.
Great.
And then Russ, you're.
Sorry, my phone died.
Of course, right? Yeah.
Right in the heat of the moment, yeah.
So maybe just a real quick, we can do a real quick recap, and then if you want the long version, you can watch the recording as well. But
Okay.
Gabby, you were talking about safe routes to school and allowances for, or how you determine which are school zones as well as the crossings. And then Maria, you also had some thoughts there.
Yeah, Russ, we, right when you were dropped off, I was hoping you can tell us basically what is like the rush hour that you would say, both cities have sort of our standards about when we can paint crosswalks and do signage and all this other stuff. But obviously it is sort of like we kind of have to have the data to back us up of what it should be done. So, what would, if you don't mind sharing with us, basically, what do you think are the peak times where your students, your families basically come and go, from your facility, or you've seen that they feel like they want to go to the trail, so that then our staff can go out there and actually physically count so that we can get the pedestrian counts in order to warrant the pedestrian treatments.
So kind of since we open right around 8 is when parents start coming in, from 8 to 8:30, 8:45 they come late because they're coming from all over the city, from all over this, pretty far away, a lot of them. Some are coming clear from Bailey, Colorado. Elizabeth,
Wow.
Westminster. Yeah, it's quite a ride for them in. And so, but I leave as early as 8:45 and I take my students out on the walks right away. So,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
that lasts all the way up till we get out at 2:50.
And are you in school in session right now, or are you done for summer break?
We're out for summer break, yeah. And then we
When do you
start back up in, August or early August, like the 10th or
Okay.
15th, maybe 15th for kids. Teachers go back early.
Gotcha, perfect. No, so that we know obviously when we can go out there and conduct those pedestrian counts.
Yeah.
We can warrant the additional safety elements.
Yeah, and I didn't hear all you said, like, I know we've been trying to get like a school zone just to slow down. And because it's Denver and Inglewood on one side, Denver, they don't even want to write tickets because you see a guy speeding this way, that's Inglewood district, and
Yeah,
vice
that's
versa.
really
Each side of the street is a different district. So
Usually we have our DPD departments are pretty good at hey, you can take it my side, that's fine. We can certainly double check.
But we've had it where I've crossed with kids and one was kind of disabled and we got halfway through crosswalk, cars still decided to come through
Jesus
and we're
Christ.
backstepping. I'm like, knock on wood, nothing's happened, but we've had some
Right, no, but that
people that
shouldn't be the case. You
literally
shouldn't be
blown
knocking on
through
wood.
while we're in the intersection
Right,
of the Harvard Gulch area. Yeah, that's probably the
So-
worst one.
Okay.
Tejon can be busy, but usually just big trucks down there. And then
Right.
Decatur is a little quieter. There's people speed through there, but it's a little quieter. It's like near the park
Gotcha.
and stuff. So, but we're just hoping for a school zone, maybe a flashing light, just when we cross. That gives cars a heads up, and that's how they did it in Littleton. We have a bike path that goes right through Prince Street,
Mhm.
and it's a bright flashing on both sides. It lights up the area and lets you know, okay, it's time to stop. People are going to get ready
Right.
to cross.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't make sense to have cars stop there on that hill all day long, on a timed basis
Right.
versus punch the light, you're free to go kind of thing.
Yeah, that light you're talking about is most likely a RRFB, which is rectangular rapid flashing beacon, and it's the two rectangles that flash alternating.
Yeah, and it's on each side of the road.
Yep.
It's not like a thing that goes over the road.
Right.
No,
Yep.
right, yeah.
They're kind of they're gate posted.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll put that on the notes to potentially look to see if we should take an additional data study. And then also, Gabby, you and I can coordinate on getting with Geneva on the discussions of the school zone as well, because that's something I'm less familiar with. Gabby mentioned talking to our Safe Routes to School folks as well.
We've been at a standstill
muted.
we're muted.
Oh, no, I'm
So you aren't
okay.
muted, Gabby.
We're at a standstill with trying to get like a school zone.
And
That would
we'll
be
figure
great.
it
If
out,
school zone
Russ.
flashing lights would keep things safe, quieter. I would
Yeah,
like
we
to say, you mentioned something about you're trying to do these statistics on how many people travel. That's for right now. In Littleton, no one drove around the streets of Mineral and Prince. It's just too busy. It's kind of like a Zuni street. And then when they put the buffer zone in the bike, you see people all the time on bikes.
Right.
So it's only going to go up by tenfold. So
Exactly.
your stats now won't comply to what you're doing in the future.
Right. No, and absolutely. And unfortunately, that is the beast that, that is the negative side of our business is that,
Yeah.
in order to do any additional safety measures, we kind of need the data now, but there's gray zones and basically schools and trails, and those are our gray zones. And so hopefully, that's why I was asking you a bit about peak times, because that's basically how we can get through around them. But hopefully we can definitely establish some safety elements for your school through this project.
That'd be awesome. And I think the work you guys do is great. Everything I heard in the comments when you guys started was, wow, I'm on board. This looks really cool. It looks like they're doing the same thing all over the state. So.
And
I
a
know
note
that we
just
only have
as-
a couple more minutes, and David has had his hand up for a little bit.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Hey, thanks. So I want to say that Russ and Vinny have very good points. I think that they need to seriously be considered. I walk my dogs on the park, and Inglewood put in a standing sign in the middle of the street on Tejon, right? The first one they put up, somebody ran over and took it out. The second one they put up, doesn't stop anybody. We wait for people to stop so we can cross. No one ever stops, right? So we have to wait for the traffic to go by. So I think a crosswalk on Zuni is not going to work. You know, I think we're still going to have issues. Second of all, I can hear my phone and email starting to ping already with the parking issue once that comes. So do you guys have some way that you're going to reach out to the people who live on Zuni specifically, not just through this mode, so that they know it's coming rather than just, I know when they paved my street, we got a little sign that said we're going to be paving in a couple of weeks. Do you guys have a plan for that?
Absolutely. I can cover that because I'm responsible for that. So we have two ways that it usually happens. The sign comes a day or two beforehand, like you said, and that's kind of the notification of, hey, there's going to be construction going on here. And we also email electronic notification and physically mail flyers that say this street's going to be milled and paved, and here are the specific changes. And we get really blunt in this final notification. And those physical flyers are mailed out to every property owner that touches the location that will, have changes along Zuni in this case. And that flyer will have a before and after picture of what it'll look like, where it's, here's what the corridor looks like and here's what it will look like as an example. And we'll also say parking will be removed on this block and this block and this block and this block on the east or west side. And that should come, it's always a challenge with the paving crews are trying to get paved as much as they can this summer, but that should come approximately 2 weeks before the changes.
Okay.
And I think that's, David, if you don't mind, if you do get pinged about this, obviously, please refer them to us. But I think Zuni is actually quite unique, unlike other corridors across Denver, and I'm sure of Englewood, where this is probably my first project that I've been involved in, where we actually get to keep one side of parking because the road is so wide. So maybe the people that are also maybe pinging you, they're maybe misinformed saying, oh, they're going to remove parking on both sides. So if you don't mind, definitely spreading the word that, we're just on we're keeping parking on one side of the street. It all depends sort of on what area do you live in. But if you don't mind, definitely referring us, obviously share our contact information so that we'll be happy to schedule office hours with individuals.
Thank you. I will happily pass the buck on to you. The other thing is the stats for everything, if I recall correctly, were all done on weekdays and none were done on weekends, or as I think Vinny said, in the evening or in the morning time. And I would like to see some stats done at different times, when more people are out.
So we did these based on the land uses and the general highest utilization for a residential land use, and the southern location, Hadar mentioned the trail parking, but also, this southern location. But that's also because there's commercial in this area. So generally a weekday morning at 11 has some of the highest commercial uses. What other times would you recommend? You said weekend?
Weekends for sure. But what I'm thinking about is pedestrian traffic across the gulch, okay. 5 to 7 in the evening. Okay. If most people are walking their dogs, or 9 to 11 in the morning on weekends, especially now that the heat is coming. I think you're going to see a lot more pedestrian traffic across there, which would validate putting in, an RRFD. What was that? RRFB? Mm-hmm. Is that the same thing as a hawk?
No, it's different.
Slightly different. Yeah, hawk actually has a red ball that requires you to stop, and an RRFB is a warning. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that. So yeah, that's all I have about that. I'm concerned about it. Also, the increased bike traffic. I mean, certainly I would not bike on the road anytime soon, and I haven't in years. So I don't know what the stats are for when you change the road usage and put in a bike lane, how much safer it really does get, especially when we're talking about people who love to do the whoop-de-doo down into the gulch and back up again.
Mhm. Good,
So-
no, good thoughts. Thank you for your thoughts there.
just have-
We're just about to wrap up. If anybody had one more thing,
Thank you.
we're gonna need to join back into the main group. So.
All right, just real quick, I didn't know, I might have missed the memo, but if this all gets approved, when are you guys slated for starting this whole project?
The internal coordination, the paving will be done by Denver City Crews in coordination with Englewood. And the internal coordination is still going on, but right now the tentative schedule is fall of 2021.
So sometime in the fall, right?
Yep, yeah,
Okay.
it's probably late paving season is what we call it. So, you know, don't quote me on this, but certainly after August, potentially, you know, September into October.
Okay, be nice to get, if we could get signage up first to give them a more heads up.
Good point with school, yeah.
I mean, it would, and just get used to it, you know, it'd be kind of cool.
Great, thank you folks so much.
Thank you guys.
We will all be pulled really quickly here back into the main room so we can do a quick summary and wrap up of one or two final slides. So we'll get you out of here before 7:30, I promise.